Welcome to my podcast. So, today we'll talk about artificial intelligence. And Hey, Zeke, how are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming to my podcast. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
So, can you share a bit about your background and how you got started in AI and in marketing?
Yeah. Actually, that this is pretty much everything I've ever done. Right out of high school 20 years ago, I had my first startup. I was, doing e-learning courses, and I sold the business. Then I was involved in a couple of, of other startups as well. Had a marketing agency for about 8 years from 2007 to 2015. And yeah, that, got acquired then. Started doing consulting as well. A lot of what you do,
Mm-hmm.
digital. My background is in economics and statistics, so I gravitated towards analytics, helping companies use data to make the best decisions possible. And yes, a couple of years
Mm-hmm.
ago, I realized that I was charging a pretty good rate for 1 hour of consulting, but I realized that for each hour of meeting with clients, I was spending 4 hours preparing for the meeting. And I just realized that I was really charging for 1 hour, but I was working five, so I had a personal goal of, what if I can get ready for each call in only 15 minutes? What would it take to get all the data that I need automatically downloaded in front of me, and to get rid of anything that is irrelevant, to only be
Mm-hmm.
left with what actually matters, so I can sit down in front of the computer for a few minutes right before the call, and be ready to have that conversation. So that was the when I started using machine learning AI to start like automating a lot of the things that I was doing manually, training different models to find that signal in the noise. And yeah, now we're a team of seven machine learning engineers and AI experts. And yeah, we work with companies mostly in the United States, helping marketing teams understand what drives their sales, what channels and what campaigns, so they can invest in the right initiatives.
Awesome, awesome. I really love that. So, So, what inspired you to focus on AI and analytics to better understand like the customer behavior?
Yeah, so I'm a big believer that part of success is being very good at what you do, but another part is doing the right things. You can spend a lot of time and effort and
Mm,
resources doing
mm,
the wrong things, and you can do them great.
mm,
But if they're not the right things, you're just going to be wasting a lot of time and money. And I think data can shortcut that process. It can help you identify where the problems are, where the opportunities are. And, when you put that money and time into it, you know that you're focusing on the things that are going to have the greatest impact. So I've always been a big believer in, not letting opinions, not even mine, decide what path to follow, but to use data to guide those decisions. Um, and then to add, a human layer on top of that, right? Like data is
mm.
the starting point. We need to like
Exactly.
interpret that, see the story, and yeah. But at the end of the day, you have two teams, one with fabulous insights, and the other one without them. The first team will always outperform the second one.
Hmm. Wonderful, wonderful. That's amazing. So, my next question is, um, how how has AI, artificial intelligence, changed the way businesses analyze customer behavior compared to traditional methods?
Yeah. So um, I like to say that with infinite time, which nobody has, right? But hypothetically, with infinite time, if you're smart enough, you'll be able to find the same patterns. With
Mm-hmm.
AI, you can train it to look at huge data sets and you help it identify certain patterns. So one example could be,
Mm-hmm.
show me campaigns that have a high impression share but low conversion rate. Sorry, low impression share, high conversion rate. So that means that when people click on the ads, they're actually converting, but the
Mm-hmm.
ads are not showing enough for those keywords, right? So
Mm-hmm.
um, having done digital marketing and every aspect of it, SEO, social media,
Mm-hmm.
paid search, paid social, conversion rate optimization, I knew where to go find these insights.
Mm-hmm.
So over time, I started with just go here and find this, and this.
Mm-hmm.
If you find this issue, put it in the report. If otherwise, move on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it started as that. And then over the last few years, working with hundreds of different brands,
Mm-hmm.
it turns out that everybody looks at different things. So I've been getting so much input from what different marketing teams look for, and this has become a really incredible tool that allows you to like track 15 different data sources in one
Exactly.
place
Mm-hmm.
and only the things that actually matter.
Exactly. Can you explain mm, how machine learning helps in predicting customer behavior patterns more accurately?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying that uh, that's not what we do.
Mm-hmm.
We there's a lot of technologies that do use machine learning to
Okay.
predict, for example, based on
Mm-hmm.
where you came from, what pages you clicked on, what is the likelihood that that person is going to buy.
Mm-hmm.
With what we do, is essentially not for I wouldn't call it customer behavior, but it's to help you identify where the sales come from. So what happens is this is the number one frustration for all marketers. They invest this
Mm-hmm.
much Google ads, this much in Facebook ads, this much in
Mm-hmm.
email, and
Yeah,
so
well,
on. And then they have all these sales at the end of the month. And they have no
true,
clue how much of that was driven by each of those initiatives, right? So
true.
that's a really difficult problem to solve, especially in 2024, because pixels are not tracking all the sales that they need to be tracking. There's a lot of things that are preventing them from actually working the way they're designed to work. You have ad blockers, you have
Mm-hmm.
iOS 14 all the way to 18, GDPR, CCPA. There's a lot of different things in place that just make these pixels very inefficient at tracking revenue. And then you have, on the other hand, the issue of platforms can only see what's happening on those platforms. So Facebook ads has no idea how your customers interact with your Google ads.
Mm-hmm.
So if somebody clicks on a Facebook ad, then a Google ad, and buys something, you're going to have two platforms claiming credit for the same sale. You
Mm-hmm.
know, Another thing that happens is, let's say you have 100 sales a day and you
Mm-hmm.
start running a certain campaign on, let's say, Google Performance Max, and
Okay.
that gets your sales from 100 a day to 120. That's 20 additional sales a day.
Mm-hmm.
But maybe 50 people are seeing the ads
Mm-hmm.
because they're showing the ads to 20 new customers, but 30 people that were going to buy anyway.
Mm-hmm.
So Google will tell you that they got you 50 customers, not
Mm-hmm.
20, because it's not based on actual incrementality. It's based on the total number of people that for which the pixel can fire. So marketers are finding that this big number that we all see, return on ad spend, ROAS. If it's something tells you it has a ROAS of 5, intuitively you would think that you can invest it at $10,000 and get 50,000 in revenue. That's what it should mean in theory, but that's not what it actually means in practice. It could be 12,000 or it could be
Mm-hmm.
60,000. So that's not acceptable in any other. domain in life. If you, let's say you invest in the stock market, and um,
mm,
you buy, 10 different stock, and then your manager comes back and says, your whole portfolio as a whole,
mm,
increased 10% in value. But maybe some of the stock lost 10%, some of the stock, increased 20%.
mm,
Um, it would not be acceptable for that portfolio manager to not tell you the individual performance of each stock. But as marketers, we just, started accepting that that's how it is, so
mm.
we're on a mission to change that.
Wonderful. That's actually very true. So, with that, I'll move on to my next question. So, um, what kind of data is most important when we talk, or when we use AI for customer insights?
For the type of insights we provide, which is attribution,
Hmm.
essentially you need uh, the inputs and the output. So
Okay,
in machine learning, these are called uh, independent variables and dependent variable.
dependent
So
variables.
yeah, so the dependent variable is usually sales, right?
Okay.
And then the independent variables or inputs are what you spend on different channels, the number of emails you send, if you're doing things like trade shows, or if you appear on a podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like anything you do to influence or potentially influence sales.
Mm-hmm.
And the way our technology works, it's impact-based attribution. So let's say that you have campaign A and campaign B, and you
Mm-hmm.
increase um, the budget for campaign A by a certain amount, and nothing happens to sales. Okay, maybe some people saw the
Mm-hmm.
ad, but it didn't have an impact. Then for campaign B, you increase advertising spend, and then that's have an effect on sales.
Okay.
And so that's measuring that impact is
Mm,
really important, because it's not about how many people who purchased happened
mm-hmm.
to see the ad. It's how many new customers did I get because of the ad. So it's all about capturing the true causal relationship in the data. And that's really one of the most difficult challenges, even for experienced data scientists.
Mm,
So that's the problem we solve.
mm. So wonderful. That's wonderful. So so could you give an example of a business or industry that has effectively used AI to transfer their to transform their understanding of customer behavior?
Yeah, of course. So I think you could actually see this everywhere, every industry you look into, So I've been talking about, one particular problem that AI can solve, which is attribution.
Okay.
Um, but right now, AI, when people talk about AI, they're talking about a much broader aspect of AI. They're talking about large language models. They're talking about generative AI that can
Mm-hmm.
produce blog posts, emails,
Mm-hmm.
even the images that you use for emails or blog posts, right? So you see that used really in every industry. I can't think of one where it just wouldn't apply, and it's all also changing the way we do marketing. So for example, for SEO, the more you can write your content in a way that resembles the questions that people are going to ask ChatGPT, the
Mm-hmm.
more likely it is that it's going to train on your data. And even like on Google, when you do a search these days, most of the time you see an AI generated response at the top, and it will give credit to the source. So it's really important as marketers to know that it can help you with pretty much anything, from proofreading to creating text from scratch and images, video even. I think that when it comes to video and images, it still has a little bit of ways to go, especially for video. That's probably the hardest one to tackle, but I think we're maybe 1 or 2 years away from being able to create something that is pretty much indistinguishable from reality,
Yeah.
so I think that it's going to change everything, and,
Mm.
and marketing wise, there's a lot of personalization going on as well, where um, it would be very difficult to train a supervised system to identify every possible scenario. If people
Mhm.
clicked on this product, but then they went here and then did this and then this, then show them this landing page. You'd have to think about every possible scenario. But AI can do that much more easily, because it
Mm.
doesn't have to see specific scenarios. It could, identify patterns and see, for example, that if you clicked on, let's say, 10 yellow jackets, it can
Mhm.
figure out that you like yellow jackets, without you
Mm.
having to train it on that particular case.
Mm.
So I think we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg, and I think
Yeah.
that AI has the potential to change the way we do marketing, even in a more radical way than the internet did 20 years ago.
Okay. What are some challenges businesses face when implementing AI analytics?
Yeah, there are a lot of challenges,
Mm.
so I think that there's a lot of hype. People
Hype
need to
also.
be,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think um, for personal use, it's great. I use ChatGPT basically every single day,
That's so
and
true.
yeah, it's
For me, this is the same.
you love it, yeah,
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah. I rarely use Google anymore, and the fact
Mhm.
that you can train it to answer questions in a certain way based on the way you like to learn
Mhm.
is huge. So um, I think that for personal use is I'm just like blown away by how far it's come in the last year or two
Mhm.
years.
Mhm.
Um, then from a professional standpoint, I think that we still need the humans behind them at this point. Like
Mhm.
they one of the most common problems is they hallucinate a lot, so they
Oh,
can produce information based on something that they picked up on the internet that it was trained on that
mhm.
is not correct. Not
Mhm.
everything on the internet is correct, and it's trained
Yeah.
on all the data out there, not just the correct data. So um, I think that's where there's a lot of potential for vertical style LLM or AI startups. Where you know if you use the OpenAI API as the foundation, but then you train it on a set of, let's say, human resources legal documents
Mhm.
that are pre-approved and to be correct. That's where I think a lot of the new startups are, and a lot of the new opportunity for business it's going to be. But yes, I would say that the because it's still an emerging technology, I think that we have to think of it as something that helps us streamline our process, but it's not gonna. We can't just 100% trust it to write a blog post and
Mhm.
post it and
Yeah.
wish for the best. We really need to be reading those
And
and yeah,
uh, also the amount of content that is being generated through AI has been increased very much.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
so
and it's that's another thing to keep in
mm,
mind. If you just give it a prompt, like write me a blog post about um, the 2024 presidential elections.
mm,
10 different people might be asking the same prompt,
mm,
and they'll all get different results. But unless you actually take the time to train your agent writer in terms of, these are the kind of articles that I like. This is the kind of format that I like.
mm,
You could say keep it short and sweet. Include examples for every bullet point. Create short paragraphs. With no more than two or three sentences. You could do a lot of that where you only do that once, so you develop your own style. So it's fundamentally different than it was to write content in the past, because now you are training the machine to try to
Mm,
replace you. So we have to think about it in an iterative way. Like, we're not going to get it right the first time. So over time we're going to be refining those prompts. So we're training the agents more and more in terms of how we want things done.
definitely. So, Zeke, I have my next question related to what we just talked about now. So, how do you see AI evolving in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, so I think that I think about this
Mm,
all the time. I have a lot of speculation. Um, I think that in the same way that with the internet, it was really impossible to predict all the different websites that would come out. I think there's so much that nobody can really envision at this point, or at least not me. But there's a few things that I see as very likely. So one is the what I mentioned before. Like, you have this incredible foundation on which you can build vertical applications that take the ability to speak English, and have a regular conversation. But
mm,
then on top of that, you're training uh, it to have, expertise in, like, like I live in Oregon. So it
correct.
could be, like the HR or, employment law in Oregon. So
Mhm,
like then you give, you charge for access to that,
mhm,
rather than having to call someone. It's just more convenient, in the same way that Uber is more convenient than calling a taxi, for example.
mhm,
So it's just going to make access to information much more convenient. um, and I think it's also going to change the employment landscape, especially for
mhm,
anybody whose job is to be a consultant, or, to
mhm,
provide information. Like, there's going to be an entity that can do that
mhm,
significantly, much better. And, you really um, have to, like, get on board and leverage that, and you still have a unique ability to be very rational and
yeah,
to ask, the right questions and navigate through different thought processes. But in terms of informational retrieval, nobody can have better memory
mm,
than a computer, right? So
exactly.
um, I think that
Mm,
that's the kind of obvious way where I see this going, using this foundational technology and building on top of it, with the individual domain knowledge for every space.
wonderful. So, how can a small business or a startup can take advantage of AI with very limited resources?
Yeah. Well, I mean, ChatGPT is free, right? And
Yeah.
even that can do a lot for you,
Mm,
help you write blog posts, even if you need to do a proposal, you could do that, so anything that
mm,
is writing, anything that is, you have to go through a lot of information and get the highlights. One of the things that I use it for all the time is, if I have a 45-minute YouTube video that I don't want to watch, I just click
mm,
on summarize. I just get the,
mm,
the the highlights. So learning has become a lot faster. So I
mm,
think that it's really good news for small business owners, because you can create content way faster than it was ever possible. You can learn anything faster than ever before. Um, so there's a lot of tools, even for content generation. Even I was playing around with Photoshop, and you could
mm.
just literally select an area and say, remove the background, add a jungle, like,
Yes.
put a tiger here. When I write a blog post in the past, I had to hire an illustrator to, like, spend maybe 3 or 4 days and go back and forth and,
Mhm.
have the perfect image and spend a couple of $100. And now you don't have to do that anymore. You
Mhm.
can get that done, for free.
Mhm.
So, yeah, I think that out of all different kinds of tools available, this is probably the most inexpensive one and the most accessible for business owners.
Mhm. Awesome. So, where do you recommend our listeners to go learn more about AI?
Well, I think that the best way to learn about AI is to use AI. I think
Mhm.
that there's nothing that's going to replace you actually playing around with the different tools. Um, but I think that, it would depend on what you mean by learning AI. Like, do you want to learn to use the open AI API to create applications? There's,
Let's say
YouTube.
if they wants to learn the regarding the customer insights.
Yeah, so I think that everything starts with a data set, right? Like,
The
you
true.
really first you had to think backwards. You had to
Mm-hmm.
start by defining what is it that I want to know,
Mm-hmm.
and then what data do I need to be able to answer that question.
Okay.
And it's possible that AI is the right solution for that, but you can
Mm-hmm.
sometimes use some like visualization, like a simple like chart that helps you get to those insights. But you could also like upload a CSV or Excel file to ChatGPT and ask questions. Like who, what customer segments have purchased more, socks last quarter. So that's only possible
Mm.
if your data is properly organized. So step one, figure out what's the question you want to get answers to. Step two,
Okay.
figure out what data you need to answer the question,
Mm-hmm.
and then yeah, just feed it, collect it, and give it to ChatGPT and start asking questions.
Wonderful. So, my last question is: any final thoughts on how AI can transform the relationship between brands and customers?
Yeah, I think that that's where we have to understand that it's all about human connection.
Mm-hmm.
AI is a fantastic tool to help us like streamline processes and content creation, content consumption. Um, but at the end of the day, um, any AI that is going to do good work needs to be trained on, who your brand is, what it
True.
stands for,
Mm-hmm.
how you position yourself, what makes you different than the competition, what kind of language you use, what do you what's that aspirational message, how do you connect with people's emotion, so um there I think that the best way to think about it is, if you were to train a person to do that, um, you're gonna initially create a document that defines, your brand guidelines, even like stuff like the font you use, the color palette. So all that stuff that you write to train a new employee, it's not that different to train an AI agent to do that kind of stuff, So I think
Okay.
that um, it's gonna make things more efficient,
Mm-hmm.
but we still need that human connection and a human behind it.
Awesome. So, thank you so much for joining uh, me today, Zeke. It's been a real pleasure having you on the podcast and sharing your insights. I'm sure our listeners will find it valuable. I appreciate your time and looking forward to staying connected. Take care.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.